I gotta say that at this point, I find the biggest bang pretty much from what you're saying, and I'm very curious about learning more about your approach because I think it's almost like you're the missing link.
I
Um,
am.
yeah, to me, not I'm not saying objectively, but I spent a lot of time focusing on what is called technical excellence,
Yeah, yeah.
and that's a tough thing to sell. It's almost like selling life insurance policy. You know, everybody wants it. No, nobody wants to pay for it, and everybody's saying, "Yeah, of course, sure," but later, right? And what's I think what the missing link in this whole thing is the thing you're talking about is actually the continuous delivery, and
Hmm.
that somehow gets shoved on the side, and people focus on other things, and then that's kind of for the later. And it's almost like assume that of course we're going to deliver once we have all our ducks in a row, but I think your philosophy is pointing in a much more reasonable and productive uh, perspective. And I'm always like, okay, so one thing I gotta say, I'm a scientist by education, by training, and I don't know if you're a scientist, but I find scientific mind in your approach.
So I have a scientific bent, but I'm not a
You're not,
scientist by
but
trade.
you have it, and
Yeah,
you are very circumspect about any claims and any things, and this is what I appreciate. Don't they take anything at
yeah.
face value?
I was just talking to one of my coworkers recently because they're wanting me to get some more content that's government focused because my company focuses on Department of Defense, and how do we bring these concepts into the government? Um, and I said, well, that's cool and all, but I need to see those problems for real because I don't talk about things I haven't done.
Yeah,
That's very important to me. I'm not going to just go make bullshit up.
yeah, yeah.
Right? I'm not going to snow anyone. It's like I know this works because I've seen it work, and this is why it works. And if I can't explain why it works, I probably won't talk about it. So yeah, that's
Yeah.
important to me.
So your approach is empirical, of course, but you have a strong Occam's razor, no
Mm-hmm.
bullshit, don't multiply explanations beyond what already is explained, etc.
Mm-hmm.
Which is pure science, just uh, absolutely scientific approach. But let me give you just one example to kick off the discussion. So I like to talk often about the difference between speed and frequency. Everybody's really gunning for speed, which I think is completely ass backwards. But for some reason, we all think speed is super valuable,
I
and
keep screaming about the same thing.
yeah,
Yeah.
and I'm like, okay, let's really take things slow, but let's do them frequently, right? And that's such a tough pill to swallow. I don't know why people just don't buy that.
I think the missing part is because you're touching on a lot of the. Well, okay, so I gave a talk at Walmart when I worked there back in 2016 about continuous delivery. And oh no, I'm thinking about something else. I used the same elephant metaphor. The Walmart talk was how do you eat an elephant,
Yeah.
but this was this was a it's actually a blog post I have that talks about DevOps and how people touch the trunk and think it's SRE and touch the tail and think it's platform, and and it's the same thing with this though, is that people touch on these different things that are actually solutions to part of the problem, but the problem is going from idea to end user and getting feedback as rapidly as possible and delivering value as efficiently as possible. That's the whole thing. And when I talk to executives about it, I'm always focusing on the business problem because my background with continuous delivery was we were trying to solve a business problem. We weren't trying to solve for continuous delivery. We were trying to solve for a business problem. You were talking about technical excellence. Yeah, that's a really hard sell. I see technical excellence as an outcome of solving these engineering problems to deliver business value better. Because that's been my experience. We were actually using continuous delivery not as a goal, but as the tool to build technical excellence and better business value. And so I look at it from that perspective. So I don't know if that's helpful at all.
Absolutely. And it's amazing how even business people do not look in that direction. Like when I get hired, and sometimes they hire me for the best practices advisory role, and then
Yeah.
you go into a large organization or medium organization, and they kind of tell you, okay, over there we see there are people who are paid to think, and then over there are people who are paid to implement what the thinkers do. Right there, there's a disconnect, right?
Well, and see, so the first 20 years of my career, I wrote supply chain software.
Hmm.
Okay. And so I know that business problem really, really well. Okay. Um, this is just a supply chain problem. And what you just talked about was, we have this huge gap in the supply chain where we're going to ship knowledge to somebody else and hope that it stays doesn't expire. If you think of knowledge as lettuce, and we're going to ship it across
Yeah,
the ocean and then hope it's still fresh when it gets there.
yeah,
You, you know, and
yeah,
so, but this is ultimately the problem is trying to get people to understand, and the business people don't understand the software supply chain problem.
yeah.
Most software managers don't understand the software supply chain problem. And I've come to the conclusion that there's very few people who've been given the opportunity to um, try to solve it without somebody giving them a book,
Hmm.
which is what we had to go do. Like, when we were in logistics, is that there's all these books on Agile, but none of it was solving the problem. And we had to go and figure out how to solve the problem and had to learn a whole bunch on the way. And I don't think very many people get that opportunity. And so they pick and they see all these things that people talk about, but they don't have a way to hook them together, I don't think, in their brains into an overall picture of what they're trying to fix.
Yeah, so it's either they reach for a lack of a better word, cargo cult,
Yeah, yeah.
and sort of like, well, these guys over there seem successful, and what are they doing? They're doing stand-ups. Let's do stand-ups, and that's a magic formula for us to be equally
Or
successful.
Dora metrics. Choose Dora metrics,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, Dora. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Or they try to shoehorn something they know works, they have a good handle on, and says, see, same as over here, we are successful doing this. Let's apply the same approach to software, you know, delivery supply chain. For example, I'll give you one example. I was invited by the CEO, a company that's selling widgets, and they say, look, Alex, I have a dilemma. Over here, I have this department of designers who are designing widgets. And I know exactly what their capacity is, what their throughput is. I can tell you exactly how many widgets can we ship this month and next month, and we can project. Over here, I have these software guys. I have nobody can tell me anything about what they can deliver, how often, how fast, and he's hoping to get the same sense of predictability and deterministic view with software.
But
Yeah,
in that situation, and I'm always going to come back with you're looking at the wrong part of the flow over here on the widget side.
yeah,
You're looking at the compiler,
yeah, yeah.
right? What about how do you get predictability out of the designers who are designing a new widget?
Yeah.
What's your predictability? How can you say it's going to take me this long to design a new widget?
Well, the first error, I think, and you may disagree, a widget is a finite. You do it like it's a chair or it's a watch, or so, and it's done, and now you can ship it.
But no, after you design it,
Yeah,
right? But it takes it. I mean, if you think about a car,
yeah,
right? A car's a solved problem. Four wheels, engine, solved problem, right?
yeah,
Except that, we're building a new car with this new engine. How's that going to impact whether we have to grab brake components off the shelf or design new brake components?
yeah,
What's that going to do to the frame, and how does it all work together? And then how do I make it so mechanics don't hate my guts as an engineer, where I put the drain plug for the oil underneath the frame member so they can't drain the oil, which happens, right?
yeah,
And so it's it takes time to design stuff, and it's non-deterministic because we might design it and then decide we don't want it anymore.
Yeah, yeah. No, but I mean, you're right. But I mean, once it's all done, then it's done.
Yeah,
But
100%.
the problem with software, it's never done unless you
Well,
decommission it.
but this is exactly right, right? It's like, yes, that version of the car
Yeah,
is done. I mean, cars are never done either, right? I mean,
right.
because even if they keep the same body style, there's tweaks year after year
Sure,
after year.
but you can have like vintage cars and you can still drive them today. In
Sure.
software, the analogy, you can have vintage software that was built in 1990, and you can't drive it anymore because the roads have changed, the rules of the traffic
No,
have
no,
changed.
no, you can absolutely run. There's people that running Apollo LIM software.
Yeah,
You can absolutely run software that was written, for 16-bit machines back in the 80s. You absolutely can. But you run into the same problem you do with a vintage car. It's
yeah,
fragile. It's clunky.
yeah, yeah. That reminds me of a joke. I don't know if you heard the joke. Four engineers in the bar discussing various bullshit, and they start talking about God and what kind of engineer is God, and then and then the genetic engineer says, I think God was a genetic engineer. He says, why do you think so? Well, if you study genes and all that, it's so brilliant. And I mean, it took really a stroke of genius to develop that. Then the other guy says, well, I think God was an electric engineer. I said, why do you think so? Well, look at the brain. I mean, it's such a perfect, you know, electric signals and all that. It's just amazing.
Mhm.
And the third guy says, well, I think God was a mechanical engineer. I said, why? I mean, look at the beautiful, skeletons and all that. And the
Mm.
fourth guy says, no, I disagree. I think God was a civic engineer. I said, what makes you think so? Well, only a civic engineer would implement waste disposal pipe through a recreational area.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
Breathing next to the intake.
yeah. So you swallow and you breathe. Yeah. So anyway, going back to my example, so I talk a lot about if it hurts, do it more often, right? And I've
Mhm.
been in situations where the exact opposite happens. Uh, they rush to shove things through the door. It blows in their faces. They lose the face and then get burned. And then the boss says, "Okay, from now on, we're only releasing 3 times per year." And
Yeah, and then it still hurts a lot because I've lived that, and it really, really hurts.
and then
Yeah.
we're looking at like huge, enormous batches, and then the edict is, okay, I want the teams to spend weeks dotting every I and crossing every T, and you have to put your finger, we cut your finger if it blows, and it's just all this like failure is not an option, and all this like paranoia, right? And it's like I want them, everybody to guarantee to me that once we go live, this will not blow. Right? So I tell
Yeah.
them,
Go ahead. Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah.
no, no. And I tell them like, look, this is a recipe for disaster, right? Because now you are increasing your blast radius. If it blows, it's going to really destroy your business because it's a huge batch. How can you know? And then they say, yeah, I mean, what do you recommend? I'm like, let's go back to frequent releases, and build a pipeline. Every delivery or release is a non-event. The things you're talking about so brilliantly. And
Yeah, I've got a slide somewhere that talks about every haystack has a needle,
yeah, yeah,
right? And I'm using like a computer stack, like a memory stack, not a right.
right, right, right,
Which it's a fun slide, but I'm just like, the solution is to build smaller haystacks so you can see the needle and you can find it.
yeah,
It's still there.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Of
To
course,
find it, you're likely to get poked.
it will prick you, but
Yeah,
yeah,
but the whole idea of we're going to make it perfect. Well, no, you're not. You can't point to a single human invention ever that doesn't have a defect.
yeah,
They 100% exist. I can tell you stories from like there was a defect in the software on Apollo 14. I'm a big space nerd, right? And I was watching all these YouTube videos about how they made the software, like how they wove the cores for the computers for the Apollos, right? And there was a defect in Apollo 14, and it was going to take him a month to reweave the core to fix the defect. And so they just told the astronauts, don't flip these switches in this sequence, right? And so we flew to the moon with defects. Defects exist. The question is how, and this is what I'm always asking people, is like, how impactful do you want that defect to be, and when do you want to find it? You can't test out defects. You can only test that you haven't found any.
Yeah, of course. So, and then if I go and say, look, what you just described, let's focus on smaller stacks, right? But you can, and let's.
Well, so let me give you some more background on some of the stuff that I've worked on in the past. So, we piloted continuous delivery and logistics in Walmart starting about in 2015, and then by 2017 we were centralizing our delivery platform, and I got recruited to come join the delivery platform. And first is one of the product owners for one of the platform tools, but then later I was responsible for the delivery metrics dashboard. Mm-hmm. And this predates Dora, right? But we were using Capital One's Hygeia and gamifying it around continuous delivery because we were trying to push CD across the entire organization. But people kept coming to my desk asking how they can improve their scores on the Hygeia dashboard, and so my boss finally told me to go build a dojo to go work with teams directly to help them with continuous delivery. To your point about, I saw this work, so we're going to just make it work for you. Well, we didn't take that approach. We're like, we don't know your delivery problem. We're going to discover that together. Here's some principles we do know that work, is that if we make things small, it's very hard for defects to hide. And that includes, we were running 2.5-day sprints to time box making things very small. We were going to deliver or fail to deliver every 2.5 days, which meant that every story had to be not 2 weeks, 2 days or less, right? Which meant that we had to have high levels of clarity into the requirements, what they were. It meant that we had the ability to actually know what we were going to test before we start coding, and say, I'm going to make it up. And people hate TDD because they're making up the tests off of vague requirements. I've done these surveys with developers at Walmart. It's like, well, I don't know I got these vague requirements. There's no point in trying to write tests for it. But and you start talking about these forcing functions around quality. And then we get a higher level of certainty earlier, and then throughout the process, not even just by delivering more frequently, but by making things physically smaller. Because to your point, it's all about batch size, but they hear speed. But when you start talking about, let's talk about this speed. Let's talk about the cycle time of development, not the delivery flow, not the delivery frequency, and not the pipeline cycle time, but the development cycle time. How long does it take for you to pick up a unit of work and complete it so it's deliverable? Let's talk about that. Let's measure that. Because that is something I know for a fact forces us to understand the work and have a really good quality process. Because deliverable doesn't mean deliverable to QA, it means deliverable to production. So what's our cycle time to get that unit of work deliverable? And then you start driving that down. One of the things that we focused on, the thing I hit on, because to your point, I'm a very pragmatic guy, right? And when we were focusing on continuous delivery originally, I had no idea how to do it. We had Dave's book, but you're reading the book. That's not going to tell you how to get there. And so I actually created, I've got a slide somewhere of this, I created a dependency diagram of CD that laid out all of the things. There were capabilities, and Dave's capability was the maturity chart that they have in that book, right? Laid it all out to figure out what depends on what so we could get there. And what I came down to was, well, number one, we have to solve for CI before we can get anywhere close to CD. And then the base skill for CI is I have to have clean requirements so I can drive tests. That leads me to BDD, right? And so then I wrote up the rules for continuous integration, which are almost unchanged what's on minimumcd.org. And I said, here's our rules. That was the tech lead on the team, right? Just not an agile coach. Here's the rules. Why can't we do that today? And then I got the entire team's minds wrapped around solving that problem. And then we just hammered at that problem in small chunks, And then we decided that the thing that worked best was we use BDD to break things down into small consumable chunks. And then our definition of ready for a story was that there was units of that the entire story can be completed in 2 days or less by the entire team. So if you had a bunch of scenarios, we could all swarm the story. There's just a few scenarios, whatever. But the duration of the story was 2 days or less. And when we all agreed that we had enough clarity that we were done refining that work and it could move forward, right? And that just drove that idea of small and testable into the team. But it also drove down defects. And when you can talk about these forcing functions around the upstream work of delivery, how do we add those forcing functions that force out the uncertainty in the flow so we know what it is? Then you'll find out that everything upstream and downstream is broken, but at least you have some more clarity into what the software development actually is.
Right. Okay. So to your list of rules, and I appreciate you published I think you were doing it with Claude, with your. Remember, you not recently, but a few months ago, I really liked that list, and I was using it on my team.
Are you talking about minimum CD?
Yeah.
No, so that website is something that there's about 6 of us, but also bringing in some other people at DevOps Enterprise Summit, and we built that.
Right. So that is a great road, or shall we say, guardrail, or whatever, right? But interesting phenomenon, because I think this is what they call the necessary but not sufficient condition for succeeding. But it's absolutely necessary to either stick to that list or forget it. Just go home and go nuts, right?
Yeah, I mean, really, the purpose of that is to create problems to solve.
Yeah.
Because every context is different, but these problems are the same.
Sure.
Yeah.
And then you have those like non-negotiable little steps to say, okay, without exception, all tests must pass. Like no ifs, ands, and buts.
Yep.
And just you guys, like, can you live with that, or else let's go home and do some gardening or learn how to bake bread, And but the thing is, when you present that to the sort of traditional or classical team of developers, they all perceive it as just kind of slowing you down, dragging you down. Nobody realizes it's actually improving your cadence.
Yeah. So the one of the skills that I had to learn in the dojo was sales.
Yeah.
And how do I sell to my
Yeah.
right? So how do I sell to my peers? And we were publishing out information all the time about how this way of working, because and just to back up a little bit, when I left logistics and went to platform, my takeaway was that this was an incredibly great way to live as a developer. That also management can destroy something really good through ignorance. Those were my 2 takeaways, because the second one happened. Is that as a developer, if you ever work this way, you will never tolerate working any other way. And that's just what it is. And so my team in the dojo, I didn't have any agile coaches on my team. We were all senior engineers who were talking to our peers, senior engineers. Say, guys, this isn't stuff we made up. We worked this way. We have done this. It's so much better. Here's why. And then we would sell and get people interested. And then when we go to a team, it was still hard because the first steps are hard. It's hard to change those habits, and it would take 2 or 3 weeks to get them over the hump,
Hmm.
and then they'd love it. But if you could just get them past the disbelief, if you get them, you have to sell them hard enough to get them interested in trying, and then say, look, it's going to be hard for a couple of weeks. I know, I've been there many times, but trust me, it does get better.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's mostly a human problem.
It is a human problem, and also, as we mentioned earlier, this need for giant steps that everybody feels like if I can make a giant step, then I will be perceived as a very valuable team member. Everybody will applaud. So we, myself including, and I don't know if you would agree, we like to overbid on work. This is something that seems ingrained in if you're an engineer. You're like, oh sure, yeah, bring it on. I can, you
Oh
know.
yeah. I have this problem.
And then if you go in and say, look, let's really take baby steps. Let's do really modest. Like, that's beadless stuff. Like, what's the big deal? I don't want to be perceived as a guy who's doing tiny little steps and, like it's a small haystack, easy to find, and anybody can do that. Where's my value in that? So that mentality, like you say, it's hard to sell. Where we have heroic like gurus and people who.
Yeah, this is yeah. But this is part of the problem. It's hey, you think you can take tiny steps? I dare you to try.
Yeah,
I dare you to take tiny steps
yeah,
because I don't think you can. Because that's a skill that you learn. It's not something that you can just do by doing less work.
no,
You have to do more work to take tiny steps.
no. Look, in my experience, you may disagree, but the hardest thing to do in software, at least my perspective, and working with some teams, is to master vertical story slice. To, like you say, to have a story.
I used to think it was hard. Now I know it's easy, but
Yeah,
you just have to know the techniques.
yeah. But it takes know-how to
Yeah, yeah.
slim it down.
Struggle
Yeah.
and struggle.
And
Yeah,
like you
yeah.
say, instead of saying, well, it will take 3 weeks, you say, by tomorrow evening, I want to see this in production. Figure it out. Yes, it's not going to have all the bells and whistles. Yes, of course. Nobody's expecting that. But at least they'll have something top to bottom working in hands of the customer.
We actually published playbooks on how to do that in the dojo, going from high level. I need a new system down to this can be delivered in 2 days,
Yeah,
and in vertical slices, right?
yeah,
This, man, one of the things I really love about the rise of AI is that the thing that I was most well known for early on was going from team to team to team when I was still in logistics, and this wasn't my job. I was just doing it, going from team to team to team and talking to them about behavior-driven development. And now, with the way the agents are working, behavior-driven development is the core skill you need to know to be able to use agents effectively,
yeah, yeah. But
which is awesome.
I've been teaching TDD for many years now, various teams, and I think we, by training or by whatever experience and how we learn to program, it's mostly focusing on implementation, not on behavior.
Yeah. No, that takes so much practice.
Yeah,
I watched so many Liz Keogh videos when I was first trying to figure out how to do BDD, and she would say, no buttons, there's no clicks,
yeah,
it's all pixies. You're telling pixies to do things. There's no machine, and trying to get out of that, and then to just separate yourself away. No, I totally agree. It's hard.
yeah.
It's so critical.
Because knowing how to properly structure your code is a skill you need decades to
Hmm.
master. And so
Yeah.
naturally, everybody's pulled in that direction. And most of the time we're spending on the job is like, how do I refactor? How do I make it changeable in the future, right? And what gets sacrificed is the behavior aspect, because we are all deep
Yeah.
down in the weeds, right? And you are refactoring, you are designing.
I can always refactor the code to make it more changeable, right?
Mhm.
But it doesn't matter if I make it super changeable if I'm not solving the business problem. I mean, this is the thing that I rant about all the time is that and when so like just quick story when we were focusing on techniques for CD and logistics. I went to one of the teams and they were explaining to me how they had to have change freeze because they were finishing up a feature and they couldn't deliver until the entire feature was done. And I talked to them about feature flags. And like, well, that requires more code. And I said, your job isn't to write less code. Your job's to solve the business problem. I said, fall in love with the business problem, not the technical problem. Your job is not to solve technology. It's to solve business, right? Business comes first. Then we come up with, then we go back and then we refactor and make things clean. But first we solve the business problem. And, people are all focused on the technology. Technology doesn't matter. It just doesn't matter. I mean, this is what I consider my superpowers. I don't care about the tools. I just care about the problem we're solving.
Yeah, definitely. But I managed to raise some eyebrows when people say, the word I used was wrong. People say you have to make the code changeable. Well, actually, code is super easy to change. It's software.
Yeah, it just may take more time to change it.
It's super easy to change, but is it easy to improve? I think that's the keywords. Can you improve this code?
Well, and there's always downtime when you can come through and start making things better.
Yeah.
Right? If you're always pushed on feature, and you don't have any downtime at all, that's a problem.
Oh, yeah.
But people they make. I see people making code super changeable where it doesn't even need to be.
Yeah.
It's like we never had to change this, and we took 3 times as long to build it because we made it super changeable. But why? What's the simplest thing?
It's called gold plating.
Yes. Yes, it is.
So yeah, but going back to this thing with frequency versus speed, etc.
Yeah.
So now, I get called because the company, the team managed to create a mess. They go live, it blows up, and now they have been burned. And I say, okay, let's focus on big batches, release only 3 times per year. Let's make sure everything is hunky-dory and perfect. And then I explain to them, no, this is way more risky. You have to go with small, frequent releases. And and then they go like, yeah, we hear you, but you have to understand we are in such and such space. We cannot afford any outages. We are blah blah blah. So that's puzzling to me because they think that they are minimizing the risk by actually increasing it, and it's so hard.
Yeah. Well, because they just. But this is it's. They don't understand the risk.
Yeah.
There are all these different fields where people who are experts in those fields are doing something that the unwashed masses think looks really risky.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Where they're doing the safest thing possible for what they're trying to do. And if you don't understand what safety looks like in this context, you'll make bad decisions and get hurt.
Yeah, it's like in the early days when they discovered there are microorganisms, because it's a fairly recent discovery, and then they say, well, if you're going to operate on a patient, you have to wash your hands. Well, the first wave thought that's risky because now I'm wasting time washing my hands while the patient is bleeding. Forget it. And like you say, and they increase the risk by your dirty hands digging through So, like you say, it takes expertise, and you have to trust the science, you have to trust the evidence, and buy into what experts are telling you, rather than your common sense assessment and say, well, it's way more riskier if we go.
And this is why I spend so much time trying to come up with ways to explain the risk.
Yeah.
Because I know they don't know, and I've stopped blaming them. I used to blame them, but now I've just accepted that something that I've learned things other people haven't learned. I've studied this particular topic very deeply, trying to solve different problems for real life, right? And so how can I communicate that the best way in business terms? or use analogies they understand, or this is something that I practice all the time. It's like like I've got one of the things that I believe deeply is that the only way you're going to get quality software is from a team that actually is on mission and not just told what to do. And so I've got blog posts that I have a blog post called "The Only Metric That Matters," because everybody wants their one metric. I'm like, here, I've got one metric for you, right? It's pride. And then the blog post is all photographs from the Thunderbirds practicing at Nellis Air Force Base, with the ground crew running through the startup process. I was lucky enough to capture one of the Thunderbirds getting down checked due to mechanical failure, where they had to go in quickly. It's like, hey, what was their MTTR? They were able to resolve that, to ship the pilot another bird. In 10 minutes, and look at the names on the aircraft. There's not a pilot name on that aircraft. It's the ground crew, the team that owns that plane, and try to get people to understand. It's like they have this level of performance because they work the same way every single day, air show or practice. They have high morale, high teamwork, and they're on mission. You have to have this. How do you, as a leader, foster this environment?
And they have each other's backs.
They have each other's backs. Even the newbie. There was a guy. This is amazing because I got to see all this, just accidentally. They had a guy who was wearing camo. He wasn't wearing the Blue Angels blue. I mean the Thunderbirds blue, because he was a trainee. They were evaluating him to see if he'd fit into the team, but they still had his back. They were explaining to him what was going on. I mean, you could see the conversation. I mean, they were like 50 feet away.
But you can feel the camaraderie.
Yeah.
100%. Related to this, I don't know if you've heard of this thing called distributed cognition.
Oh, which?
Distributed cognition.
No, but go ahead.
So
I have an idea.
In the Navy, you have those huge aircraft carrier ships,
yep,
which are humongous, and the challenge is how do you moor them? How do you bring them into moorage? They're just enormous. Turns out you cannot have a single control tower where the guy is just kind of telling it turn left or right. They have crew of a team distributed around the moorage, and the team works in real time, collaborates, and they somehow get the ship safely in. This is called distributed cognition, and I think it really applies to software as well. To have a bunch of people, like you say, on a mission, have each other's backs, trust unconditionally each other, then never stop to worry about, oh, what if they push me under the bus or something like that, right?
Yeah.
So distributed cognition, I think, describes our profession quite well on a mission. Now, it's very disheartening. I have a recent anecdote where I was brought in to, try that mob programming or ensemble program. And then first session, I explain how things are working, and one guy raises his hand and says, "Okay, I have a remark. What's up?" He says, "Look, I spent decades learning, gaining my skills, becoming an expert at this. I sure as hell am not gonna share that for free with others."
So this is where I have an advantage because I am not a consultant. I mean, I will consult with our customers on things, right? But I'm not being hired to sugarcoat anything. That's not my job. And I will absolutely call out my peers. I'm like, hey, okay, cool. You spent decades becoming a junior developer. Good job. I'm a senior developer because I grow other senior developers. That's my job.
And the other guy refused flatly to do any either pair or mob programming because he says, "Look, Alex, the only reason I went into software development is I don't like working with people. I want to lock myself in a room, shove your ticket under my door, and I'll deliver the code."
So I actually have I have a hack for that. Because I'm also honestly, unless I'm really focusing on it, I suck at pairing. I just do, because I'm South Way. I grew up as a developer, and Um, if we're sitting down and solving a shared problem, that's cool. But if it's a known problem, if I'm just writing code against requirements, I don't, I just want to get it done. Um, but I don't think that you get the most value out of paired programming as much as you do out of mobbing the requirements.
Hmm. Yeah.
Now, and so on the team at Walmart that I was leading originally for that first CD pilot, there was 14 developers on the team, and if I tried to get everybody on board with paired programming, it would have just been just a nightmare. And it's like, well, in the book it says, I didn't use a book. I just said we have no process unless it adds value. So we'll add process as it adds value. But what I did do was we all have to understand the requirements from a pragmatic point of view. Like for the next story or the next set of stories, we all have to understand what that work is, because you might be out, you might get it half done and then be sick. The priorities might change, and we're not going to assign work to anybody. Everybody has to be able to pull off the top of the stack because that's our priority. That's the order we're ordering the work. So everybody has to understand it, which means we all have to collaborate on refining that work down into scenarios, right? And so we refine it all down in scenarios and how everybody understands it, right?
Yeah.
And then we do the work of refining those scenarios down to interfaces. Like, here's any sort of service interface change we have to make, and we do technical breakdown from there. So we had very detailed information. It sounds like this is something to take forever. I know you don't know it doesn't take forever. It didn't take forever, right? This would be like an afternoon of refining stuff. Yeah. But then everybody knew what it was. Also, because we had everything down to 2 days or less, everybody knew if somebody was struggling. This is a thing. It's like I'm again pragmatic. I'm not about kumbaya. I understand people struggle and hide it. So if I keep things small, then I'm able to identify when someone's struggling, and then we can offer them help.
Yeah.
Right. And so. And then we just encourage people, hey, if you want to work together, work together. And then if we had something brand new we were trying to teach the team, we would do a mobbing exercise on that brand new thing. But it would have been, people hate pairing. I think it should be something that's be optional to people and you should show them how. But me personally, I would focus on the stuff upstream and have a high, because that builds so much teamwork solving that big problem together that I think it helps downstream to make it easier for people to ask questions and ultimately pair program on stuff if they want to.
Yeah. Okay, makes sense. In a way, it's like a restaurant kitchen crew. Like, you have people who are focusing on various parts of the job. But if, let's say, if the chef calls in sick, then the pastry chef can jump in and chop onions, and it's not like, okay, the show must go on, right? Yeah.
100%. And so for me, it's not about the things people do this activity. For me, it's how do we build resiliency. Again, because it's a lot of the way I think about this stuff comes from I'm building a high availability system that will wake me up at 3:00 in the morning if we do it wrong. That costs $1,500 per minute of downtime, right? That we can't afford to screw this up, right? And I don't want to be called into work at 3 a.m. with a VP breathing down my neck while I'm trying to solve a problem. Right. So how do we build? And I don't want to be, we couldn't deliver that because Bob was out. How do we build a resilient team to build a resilient system so that we have, the business working? And so all of it for me is engineering that problem. Right. I always focus on operations first. This is the thing I do with CD is like, if I can't get to production, nothing else matters because that's ops. And ops is what I care about.
Definitely. And you bring up a good point that I wanted to discuss. You've probably we've all been through incidents called all hands on deck.
Uh-huh. Yeah,
So that's a
sure.
very interesting thing to me. I've been through a number of all hands on deck, where everybody, CEO is down, everybody's down, right? And you watch how we work. All of a sudden, there's no red tape. There is no uh, committees that are going to change management, blah blah blah. We just swarm on fixing this problem.
And see, this is what else is I yell about all the time is that, okay, look, your quality process is designed around the perfect situation where nothing
Yeah,
fails. Okay,
yeah,
but when we have an emergency, a bunch you just cast aside a big swath of your quality process
mhm,
because it's an emergency. So we have a dumpster fire,
yeah,
and now you're just handing everyone gasoline cans and then hoping nobody throws any on the fire. What if we combined our quality process for the emergency,
that's it.
you know,
That's
first
it.
made a resilient quality process for a hot fix and then only use that? Wouldn't that be
That's it.
amazing? All the red tape.
That's it. That's why I mentioned you're the missing link, because I don't hear much of that being brought up and discussed.
People always focus on the development side and the
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
agile and but what about ops?
yeah,
And so I mean this is really the point. I just like if you focus on operations and the needs of the business, to me everything just becomes clear.
yeah, yeah.
It's obvious.
But for some reason, it's the last thing that everybody thinks about when we move into a
Yeah.
new. We move heroically into a brand new green field, and nobody mentions, like you say, what is our quality? Hmm.
You know when my team would value stream map a team, we'd always start at production and work backwards,
Yeah, that's it.
right? Um, Multiple reasons for that, but you know, the focus is why aren't we there?
Yeah.
Like the company I worked for, when we started building product to help the government, we started with why can't they deploy?
Hmm.
We didn't start with version control. We started with why can't they deploy
Yeah.
and try to solve that problem.
And that's why if I'm leading a brand new, whatever, initiative or team, my first
Yeah.
order of day is like, okay, show me time to hello world in production
Yes.
now.
Yeah.
And
Or
then,
just a comment.
yeah,
Skip a comment.
and then you learn that takes like it's shocking how long it takes.
Yeah.
You just put a walking skeleton, bare bones in production. Why is it taking so long? Like you said, the quality is broken. You don't have defined quality.
You know, this is the thing I really miss about my last few years at Walmart was that our platform was so good at that point. It had all the stuff baked into it that I could get. I'd actually created a script where I could get just a bare bones Java or JavaScript or React, um, hello world in production in 10 minutes. I just run the script and create the repository. It would create your configuration file for the pipeline, which was very short. It would kick off the build, and then you'd get Slack messages about the build happening, and then it would be deployed to production. And says, "Here's your URL." In 10 minutes.
Yeah, that sounds reasonable. Not in 10 days, but one anecdote when it first dawned on me that how critically important this is, and I asked the team, okay, I want you to show me how long will it take you time to hello world, and
Yeah.
I forgot to mention in production, so they turn around and show them on their computer.
Yeah. Someone made this comment the other day. I was talking about uh, something about deploying. They were like, "Yeah, but you don't mean to production, right? You're talking about to a pre-production environment." I'm like, if I can't get to production, it's not a pipeline; it's a test tube.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's
Yeah, I
like
know.
I always mean production because that's a pipeline.
Yeah. Yeah, so let's talk about failure. Uh,
Yeah.
to me, failure, I may be too overzealous about it, but I like to always start from a broken system. But I like
Okay.
to break it myself. And I learned that from SecOps guys.
Okay.
Security guys, I like working with them. You know how they like to, in old school sort of low ops situation, they start from a system where nobody can access nothing. It's completely broken. I love that.
Yeah.
I love that, right? So they don't have any preconceived notion, oh, we gotta give it. And then they listen to people scream. And then, I can't do my job. Why can't you do your job? I need this, and that. Are you sure? So you have to convince them to open a little peephole to you. And little bit, that's the most resilient system if you work it that way, right? From I can't do nothing to, okay, I can do a little bit, but, and then you stop. The moment you reach the point where you can do your job, we stop. We don't open any more doors for you, right? And that analogy, I think, works also on software. So you just, like you say, you just do whatever solves the business problem. Stop, don't role play, don't waste time on thinking and daydreaming about your design patterns and your hexagonal architecture, blah, blah, blah. It works, right? Okay, we'll see what happens next. Yagni, right? You aren't
You know,
gonna need it.
it's called red green refactor,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah,
Refactor doesn't always mean that it's a unit level.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, and another thing you mentioned is uh, approximation before precision. Let's first approximate things. So, for example, if I go and buy to IKEA and I buy a shelf, I'm not going to start tightening all the bolts. I will first approximate. I lay down all the parts, right? Then I count them. You know, I think software should be the same, like integration, high-level integration first. All the big chunks, you line them together. They're all kind of talking to each other, walking skeleton. Then you move into more precise work. But people like to jump right into like tightening the screws and polishing the little detail.
Yeah, yeah. Well, because that's where the fun is. I mean, this
Yeah,
is the reality. Coding is fun.
yeah,
All right. I mean, it's painful at times, but when you see things start to work, that's entertaining,
yeah,
right? And it's fun. When we started, and I wrote a post for InfoQ about called Agile Rehab that talked about our journey to continuous delivery at Walmart. Well, step one was not, hey, let's go and build pipelines. Step one was, let's go do a business decomposition of the domains so that we can start organizing teams around business domains and have product teams instead of feature teams or project teams. So that we can then start decomposing those domains so we can come up with a system architecture so that we can then start talking about the interfaces between those teams to make sure it doesn't suck, right? So that we can then have some teams starting off with the right architecture so that we can do continuous delivery, because you can't do continuous delivery with a 25 million line monolith tightly coupled at the database.
yeah. Yeah. But I think one of your strongest points for me is you mentioned it a few times, and that just seals the deal. Like, you may think you don't need to be nimble. You may think that we can be sluggish, but have you thought about security? You know,
Yes.
that's the
Again,
future.
operations. It's operations, right? It's like, oh, we only need to deliver once a month. Oh, so if you have a critical incident, you'll fix it next month.
Yeah,
You've got a major CVE, you fix it next month. I saw a guy talking about GitFlow, and he said that they've just, that they have they use release trains. They release once a week. And like the problem with a release train is that you're not going to wait till next week to deploy critical fix,
yeah,
but you've designed your process around best case scenario instead of operational reality.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, yes, it's exactly that.
That's
This is what I try, but see, it's scary scenarios that I really try to hit people like CEOs and CIOs with, right? Is that,
and
but
again, yeah,
what about a breach?
yeah,
How do you handle a breach?
yeah. And they talk about these fancy hot fixes and all that, but that's bullshit. That's not, like you say, it has to be a normal, regular process.
Yeah, it's like, how scary do you want to be to have the emergency be?
Yeah, yeah,
It's like, it's already scary. Why should I make it more scary?
yeah, yeah. And again, for the third time, this is the missing link, in my opinion, that needs
Oh,
to be talked about more, needs to be brought into a mainstream practice, as, like you say, cemented in. Start from the failure. Let's talk about security. When we start building a system, let's make it completely broken so that we know that it's not secure and we can detect that security breaches happen, and then work on plugging those holes, right, and have those automated tests baked in, so that moving forward, you know that this scenario is not going to happen to you ever again.
Yep.
Nobody thinks about it. People wait until the incident happens and then they patch but it's like house of cards, right? Everything's backwards, right? And that's why again, I'm getting the most mileage from your content, because that's something that resonates with me, and I don't see mentioned in all these like courses and webinars and books. Why
I,
don't
I, I start wondering how. So back when I started as a developer, at least the company I worked for, there was no operations team. There was no BAs, product owners. There was account managers, and then people like me who modified our software. My job was to gather requirements, talk to the customer, uh, build the system, maintain the database, deploy things. I did it all, right? Um, and also, carry the pager, and so I got to see the impact over time of focusing on quality code. Um, there's been, back in the late 90s, they started matrixing organizations and the functional silos. And I think that there's just not enough people. So you've got the majority of the agile coaches out there aren't technical. My thing is, if you're an agile coach, you better know how to do CI at the technical level, or you're worthless, because the entire point of everything you talk about and all the Scrum stuff is continuous integration. That's your only purpose for living, is to teach me CI. If you can't do it, you suck. Um, uh, but most of them have no idea. You've got developers who just have no experience in operations, so they don't think about it.
no,
It's
never.
SAP is the problem. And you've got testers out there saying developers deliver crappy untested code. Yeah, because they weren't taught to test. You're not supposed to be doing your job. You're supposed to teach them how to test, right?
Mhm.
And so the industry organized itself for failure.
Exactly. And I can relate my experience. My first paid job was on IBM AS400 mid-range COBOL, and like you say, I did it all. Uh, talked to I was working for the government bureau, cutting payroll for British Columbia hospitals,
Yeah,
about 150 hospitals running on, and also patient admission, etc. So I would be talking to the hospital administrators. I would be gathering requirements. I would be coding COBOL, blah blah blah. I would be, testing and everything. I would then cut the tape. I would drive to the hospital, install it on their AS400, train the staff how to use it. So it's like, and like you say, got woken up at 3 a.m. Something's not working.
oh well, but this is the other thing, that if you want to build empathy for the end user, go deliver software and then see them use it
and watch them use it.
and hear them hate it,
Okay, of course.
right? Because I felt that too,
I
right?
witnessed one eye-opening anecdote. I witnessed a woman break down and cry because she was using PeopleSoft for payroll, and she got stuck, and it just ruining her life, making her miserable. And then you feel for these people. She's doing it 8 hours a day,
Yeah,
crying and wanting to pull her hair out. And then you
yeah.
learn you have to have some empathy. You have to put yourself in the user's shoes. And when you're designing your software, make sure they're not, follow the
Just
principle.
before
Yeah, go ahead.
call, just before this call,
Hmm.
I've been spending 10 minutes trying to figure out how to insert a goddamn line in a Notion page,
Okay.
right? Because I just need to insert a line in between two things, and I can't figure out how to do it,
Yeah.
right? But I have to do it for reporting.
Hmm.
And so I spent 10 minutes just ripping my hair out about this shitty, shitty software.
Yeah. It's called in design. It's called the principle of least astonishment. Like
Yes.
when you offer user experience, they should not be astonished when they try to do something, which we often are. Like I don't get it. Like, oh, how can this be so stupid? So so before we go, Brian, can we just quickly touch on AI? I know you've been doing a lot of very good
Sure.
sharing your good experiences, and if you
Yeah,
have
I'm
time.
about. Well, I actually have a meeting in very shortly, but I have an article I'm about to publish on AI development.
Cool.
It's my first end to end. I'm only going to speak to you in scenarios. I'm not going to write code.
Hmm.
Um, and so it talks about that, followed by a follow up article about why it doesn't matter when you make developers faster. It just doesn't matter.
Sure.
So, but I can send you. It's not published yet. I can send you the draft link if you want to read it.
Please,
But
please.
the my experience has been that number one, I was a huge anti this will never work person,
Me too. Me too.
and then I saw that the tools improved. I was actually writing a blog post to prove how bad it was,
Hmm.
but I needed evidence because I'm not going to just go spew bullshit. I'm going to present evidence, right?
Exactly.
So,
Empirical.
and I went to go grab evidence, and I couldn't get the evidence because the tools had improved, and what it gave me back didn't suck. I went, okay. I couldn't finish the blog post. I had to throw it. It was almost done. I had to throw it away, right? Um, and so then I decided I had to go and figure it out. And then I went to a hackathon that John Willis and Patrick Bois were hosting, and spent some time hanging out with those guys and playing with stuff. And then I wrote an article about, hey, if you are a developer who think your job is data structures and algorithms, you're obsolete today. I can replace you. I don't need you. But if you focused on how to solve business problems with code, you're valuable in the future. Dig into behavior-driven development. And so that was that was February the 24th. February of 24 is when I wrote that blog post. And so this is a follow-up to that one. And then why it doesn't matter. Because also I'm giving talks to platform accountable why platforms don't matter. AI is just another platform. It doesn't matter if you don't make systemic change to take advantage of the capabilities.
Yeah. No, I'm looking forward to that. I think you are probably going to give the most level-headed, useful review without hype, without, you know.
No, I mean I use it every single day, and I know where and how I get bit. I know how to avoid getting bit.
Fantastic. Please keep
Yeah,
sharing. I have my eyes peeled on that because I think that's definitely where things are going, like it or
yeah,
not, like it or not.
yeah. I'll send you the draft, and please, if there's anything in there that you don't think is explained well or
Sure, I'll
something,
give you feedback.
yeah, please, I appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Brian. I want to keep you longer. I know you have other things to do. Really appreciate your time. Maybe in the future we can continue sharing
No, no,
experiences.
I love having these conversations because it also reminds me about things I really should talk about that I'm not talking about enough.
Yeah,
Uh, but also, I just love comparing notes with other people who are trying to solve this problem.
and I
It's
really want
really
to
hard.
I want to encourage you to press on and let's bring this more to the surface. It's absolutely necessary to get these things cemented into everybody's thinking process. Well, because otherwise, again, like you say, we're setting ourselves for failure.
Yeah,
And,
yeah. I mean, everyone talks about Congress law, and the industry has
and
broken its.
I'm not a masochist, right? I don't enjoy being tortured by failure, constant outages. So let's get our act together. And I think
Exactly.
you can show the way. You can lead the trail. You can highlight what needs to be done, and please continue, keep pushing, keep publishing. We are reading.
I
We are
appreciate it. Thank you very much.
okay. Thanks, Brian. Have a great
Yeah,
day. We'll talk
you
soon.
too.
Cheers.
Yeah.